Hassan to set up the helpline exactly a year ago. Just a very quick word about the helpline. The helpline is there for anybody in the community, from young to old, who might be struggling with whatever it is, with financial difficulties, with depression, with any of the many struggles that clients all face nowadays. Our volunteers have been highly trained and remain anonymous, and they do a true chesed shalem, because you could be sitting right next to one of our volunteers now, but nobody but them and their spouse know that they are a volunteer on the helpline. They do tremendous, tremendous work, empathizing, listening, and guiding people to find somebody in their life who they can turn to, somebody they can turn to face to face, places where they can turn to get help. And one never knows who you might be saving or helping, which child, which adult, who in secret might be struggling. And it's so necessary to empower people, to tell people about the helpline, so that they can call, they can keep their respect intact, so nobody knows that they're calling, and that they can go and be empowered to find an adult or somebody safe in their life that they can turn to and get the help. We obviously can't do this without the members of our helpline, without the volunteers, and we do need more volunteers. We're intending to move from opening only 4 times a week at very short, limited hours, from 10 till 10, from Sunday till Thursday in the very near future. And we can only do that if we do have more volunteers and people step forward to undergo the training and to take on a true chesed shalem. It's a huge privilege to be standing here tonight to introduce somebody who is very, very close to me. It would be wrong for me to call him a friend because he's so much more than a friend to me. He is somebody who has supported me for many years already and encouraged me, and has been a tremendous source of encouragement for a number of years. 30 years ago, when there were not so many mental health professionals in the field, at least from mental health professionals in the field, when mental health was something which was put under the carpet just very recently, there was only one man out there who was trailblazing and changing the way we know, the way the Hampshire world deals with mental health to this day. And that was Rabbi Russel. There was nobody else there. The path that we tread today in this field, the path that we tread today in parenting, is because of the roots work that was done by Rabbi Russel. And therefore it gives me a great honour to ask Rabbi Russel to continue the good work that he's been doing here in Manchester and to guide us here again tonight.
Okay, good evening everybody. Well, a lot of people here. I've got a lot of subject, a lot of material I would like to cover tonight. And we'll see if the Siyata Dishmaya, if we can make I hope, a picture that's user-friendly, that will make sense. It's not just theory, but we'll be able to see in practice how to deal with today's children. The reality is, whether we like it or not, things are changing. Most of us, if we dig into what we experienced as children, even the younger parents in the room will discover, Kal v'chomer, those of us that are grandparents, will discover that that which worked for you so well, perhaps when you were a child, is not going to work so efficiently anymore as you try to bring up your children. The world is changing. There seems to be a debate that we hear constantly in the print media and the lectures and the darshanim. It looks like this ping pong match. That on the one hand, we're exhorted that love, 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 look away, just love the kids, just hug them and love them, everything will be fine. And on the other hand, the next month we get someone coming out saying, no, that's rubbish. You have to have rules, you need discipline, you need structure. And then of course a month later they flip back again and say, no, it's the love, love, love. We've got to go that route. It appears it's hard to hear one simple mahalach that is correct for this generation of children. On top of that, there also appears to be like a ruach, I hear it constantly, where there's a feeling as if today, like the mental health world, are finding a deterrence for every kid in the form of a diagnosis, a disorder, there's a reason, there's a problem, so everyone is excused for everything, because we'll quickly find out a reason why. And therefore there's no real discipline. You can't really do anything anymore because there's always a deterrence and you're told not to. So you're scared, should I or shouldn't I? What are we dealing with in this generation? The reality is that without rules, structure, and discipline, we create anarchy. It doesn't work. We have to have rules, structure, and discipline with our children. The problem is that the methodologies with which this was done in previous generations is no longer working. And the question is, how do we do it now? And what is an authentic Torah Mahalach that we can actually bring more structure and discipline and have our kids thriving, not just surviving, but actually thriving in the system? For about, I'll say a couple of things that I find quite disturbing. That I've been asking for a long time, children who have graduated through 12 years of education in our systems, yeshivish, hasidish, throughout the yeshivish kind of the Torah world, and ask them after they've been through 12 years of experience in the schools. I asked hundreds, maybe even thousands at this point, of kids, which of the following 4 statements most closely reflects how you feel or felt after you graduated, after you finished these 12 years of elementary and high school? So we're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids. So statement 1 was, I think school is amazing. I really shined from going to school. It brought me closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was an amazing, amazing experience. Statement 2, it was okay. Statement 3, didn't really like it. And statement 4, I hated it. I hated it. It really hurt me. I didn't enjoy it at all. What do you imagine were the percentages that I get responses? What percentages do you think respond to the first statement? It was the most amazing experience. I really shined. I feel so much closer to Rabbi Shalom. Okay, we won't do a hands up here, but I get about 5%. Anyone said 5? I get another 10% who tell me it was okay, which means I get a whopping 85% who tell me it was either didn't really enjoy it or hated it. This is an awful, awful statistic. It leads us to what we're looking at in today's children. Years ago we talked about, this by the way tonight is definitely not about off the derech at all. We're going to talk about regular mainstream, bringing up kids. But years ago we talked about the OTD, the off the derech, and then we introduced a new one, the OOD, the off our derech. Like sort of with the program-ish. But not exactly off, but not exactly on. In the last few years, I've been talking a lot about what I call the ONTDU and the ONTDD. And this is the product, I think, of what we're seeing, which is why parenting today is becoming such a challenge. The ONTDU, which one should I do first? Yes. The ONTDU is the on the derech uninspired, and the ONTDD is on the derech disillusioned. These are kids who basically dress the way they're meant to, look the way they're meant to, but they're either uninspired or disillusioned about the whole system, about everything we're doing. How do you parent such kids? And why do we have so many problems with children like this? What's causing all this? And how are young parents in this generation, and I submit to you, for grandparents, it is so difficult to come to terms with what they see happening with their children and their grandchildren. I used to run when I was in Lakewood all the years. After every Yontif, I had to offer workshops to grandparents just to cope with what they experienced over Yontif, coming to see how their grandchildren were being brought up. Because to them it looked like everything was chutzpah. Kids are just chutzpahnik, they're wild, you can't let them do that. And they were like just beside themselves watching this in one generation. Everyone smiles, so you all know what I'm talking about. I'm going to try and present an authentic mahal that addresses these issues. And when I say authentic, it's authentic in terms of what the time-honored principles of Torah are. But I'm going to try and show you what it means and how to do it lemaisa, practically. Let's do normative child development. Let's start with that. What should normative child development look like? How's it meant to, if it works well, how's it meant to look? So what's meant to happen is that 0 to 2, roughly, we do nurture. Unconditional love. That means there's nothing they can do that's wrong. 0 to 2, they're a little baby, and more or less anything they do, you just love them to pieces. You enjoy whatever they do. There's no anger, there's no discipline. There's basically, you enjoy it from 0 to 2. Of course, you don't let them do things that are dangerous to them or others. We're not talking about that. But I'm talking about things, for example, you finally convinced your spouse to paint the living room. Finally. And they finally got round to they paint the living room. And then everyone goes and has lunch, and you come in afterwards, after the whole living room has been painted, and discover that your 1.5-year-old got hold of a red permanent marker and decided to draw artwork all over the living room wall that was just painted. What are you meant to do? You're meant to take out the camera and take pictures and laugh. You're not meant to make the child feel they did something horrible and wrong. 0 to 2, if they spill their Cheerios all over you, just when you're like desperate to get out to work, and it's the last minute you're feeding your kid, you look the other way for 1 second, and they tip the whole bowl all over your clothing. You're meant to laugh. You're meant to get out the camera. You're meant to think it's funny. If you're driving to a chasna and you've got a kid on your lap, and when you get out the car, you discover a huge stain on your clothing, and they're 0 to 2, you're meant to laugh. Why? Because a child has to experience the foundation of their life has to be that they know they are unconditionally loved. There's nothing they can do that's wrong. Nothing. Whatever they do, you think it's cute, you think it's adorable, you think it's funny. And you deal with it without communicating through your facial expression, through your body language and your tone of voice, severe disapproval and anger. Because if you do, it undermines the belief system of the child that they are a wonderful human being and are unconditionally loved by you. So on the contrary, the more they spill the Cheerios on you, the more they draw on the wall with that permanent marker, the more they make your life challenging, shall we say, when they're 0 to 2, the more opportunity you have to instill in them a foundation that they are unconditionally loved. Why is that so important? Because the next step is 2 to about, 14, 15, 16. I mean, changes. It depends on the community, it depends on the world. But 14, let's say 15, 16. 2 to 15, 16. Because the next stage is limit setting. And we as parents have to set limits on our children. And we have to show them what they can do, what they can't do. We have to show them what a bedtime means. We have to show them what's appropriate when you're playing with your siblings, what you can do and you can't do in terms of taking their toys or knocking down their Lego tower, their Magna Tile tower, whatever building these days. We have to set limits on their lives to show them what's allowed and what's not. So if we were successful in the 0 to 2, and however you look back, you wish you had more of those Cheerios all over your clothing experiences, or writing on the wall experiences, because they were the formative experiences with which you condition your child to feel unconditionally loved by you. So that when you come to do your limit setting, 2 to 15, 16, wherever it is, they experience the limit setting as an extension built upon the unconditional love. It's not personal. It's not that you're upset with them. It's not that you're setting limits because you're frustrated, because you find life difficult with them. But they experience it as an extension. It's not that you stop unconditionally loving them when they hit 2. Of course, you continue the rest of their lives. But when you have to set limits, their experience of that limit setting is as an extension of the love you gave them at 0 to 2. Masha Enke, when you allow frustration and angry faces and voices and the body language of frustration to be there in the 0 to 2, then when you start doing the limit setting, they experience it as you being personally upset with me and they defy you. So if you do it right, the 0 to 2 is the nurture, unconditional love. That's followed by limit setting, which the child can then experience naturally as something that's healthy and good for me. It must be good for me, because my mother and my father love me unconditionally. That's what they experience. That's the program that you put into them. So it must be that this limit setting is an extension of that, and it must be because you love me. And when you do that, then you come to the third stage, which is sort of 16 to who knows when, which is about guidance, where they turn to us, parents, for guidance, where they value our guidance with their lives, with choice of spouse, with choice of yeshiva, with choice of parnasa, what to do with their life. They turn to us because they experience what we've been doing with them all their lives was about them, not us. That's normative parenting. And the truth is, more or less, if we would all do that, more or less, our kids would almost always turn out more or less fine. If we would do that. The problem is, it doesn't always work out like that. First of all, not all parents even know that's what I'm meant to be doing, or are disciplined enough to be able to do it properly. But even if we did do it properly, if you more or less did it, more or less properly, your kids would turn out fine, unless one of 2 things happens. Unless there are one of 2 types of problems that beset your family, that happen to your kids, in which case, even if you did that, it's not going to help. So that you could actually have normative parenting. But if certain things happen to your children or your family, then that will not sustain your children. And your children will be in crisis. Your children will be in trouble. And these 2 things I'm going to describe, because what tonight is about, you'll see at the end, is about how do we create resilience in our children. So that even if we do everything right, and unfortunately they go through some form of trauma, or they have an attachment problem, they had an attachment disorder, we can still help them survive. We can still bring them back. What we really want to do tonight, what my goal for you is if I can give you the understanding of how do we create resilience in our children. Resilience. So that even if they go through trauma, or even if your family system had certain attachment problems, your kids will still come out fine. They will still survive. And what does resilience mean? Bounce back. they will be able to bounce back, and we can still help them through life if we understand. So I'm going to explain what attachment means. Ideally, if we did this system properly, then the children would feel attached to us as parents. They would feel safe and secure with us as parents. They would feel connected to us properly. And the importance of attachment to us as parents is that a child that has healthy attachments to us learns in life how to have healthy attachments with friends, how to have healthy attachments with teachers, with their rebbes, eventually with their spouse, with a boss, with employees, with people in life. They learn how to have healthy relationships with other people if you have healthy attachments. When you don't have healthy attachments, then essentially you're frightened. You're frightened of life, you're frightened of relationships, and you don't know exactly how to do relationships properly, which impairs all your relationships for the rest of your life until a person deals with their attachments. You actually see people as threatening. See, there's part of the brain, a little piece of the brain inside. It's called the amygdala. It's a little tiny piece of the brain. And it's a very small little piece right in the middle. And its job is to watch out there in the world and see if anything is threatening. See if anything is scary. So if your primary attachments with your parents, for example, let's take the example where the dining room was indeed repainted, and the kid comes out and finds the red marker and starts drawing on it, and the parent comes out and has a total panic attack, yelling and screaming, who left the child there? Who left the marker there? What's going on? There's this screaming and yelling and body language and attitude and sounds of fear and anger, and all this noise comes, teaches the child not to feel safe. So the child doesn't feel safe in the relationships with those people who are yelling and screaming around him. And so where a child has poor attachments to begin with their parents, where they don't feel as safe and secure as they ought to, they unfortunately take that experience into life and they find relationships to be threatening. And so all relationships become a little scary. And the problem with that is that all relationships in a certain way are a little bit scary, because none of us are perfect. Every person you ever meet in the world, every person, sooner or later, if you have a meaningful relationship with them, they could rub you the wrong way. They could say a comment that was a little hurtful. So if you're a healthy person with healthy attachments, it just rolls off you. You don't even notice it. It doesn't bother you because it's part of life. But if you've been frightened from your youth, if as a child you were scared and you don't have healthy attachments with your parents, then you view these relationships as terrifying. I want to stay away. I don't know if I feel safe with you. So all relationships become impaired. So when you come later on as a parent, you understand to try and set rules, structure, and discipline, which is essentially controlling your child's life. The child sees you as threatening, and of course they start being defiant. Attachments is one of the key issues that we're going to talk about tonight, about how do you develop healthy attachments with your children so that they can feel safe with you and resilient to life's problems. The second issue I want to talk about is trauma. What trauma does, similar to attachments, is it makes you see life as scary. You see people as scary. Unfortunately, there are at least 3 different types of traumas that can affect our children. Last time, I think it was in this hall I spoke, obviously about abuse, and we know that if 20% of the kids experience that. 20%, 1 in 5. That's a very large number of children who unfortunately experience trauma. And trauma, like similar to attachments, makes you scared. It makes you scared of people, it triggers you, it shuts you down. It makes it hard for you to be rational. And so there we are as parents trying to talk to our kids and rationalize, explain to our kids, and help them to be healthy, and their brain is shut down because they're traumatized. Similarly, learning traumas. We know how many percentage of children are not able to learn properly, and their life in school is primarily academic, their whole school life. So if they're unable to learn well in school, they also have what we deem learning trauma. And that's also part of them is shut down because of it. And then there are also all the other types of what we call de facto learning traumas, which is children struggling with all sorts of different issues and problems in life that we're probably unaware of, all sorts of things that clog their minds and prevent them from being able to learn because their mind is clogged with problems and sorrows. And so they also are unavailable to learn, and their experience in school and life is also one of trauma. When you put together these sugyas, that means the sugya of attachments, having poor attachments with the parents to begin with, because we didn't know how to do nurture, limit setting and guidance properly. If we put that together with trauma, the real issues of trauma that kids go through, is it any wonder that so many of the kids are defiant or act with chutzpah, and it's so difficult to get them to cooperate. What we're going to try and see if I can do is help us understand, like, what happened to children? What happened in the world that it is so difficult for children in this generation to cooperate with us? Because probably the biggest problem that any home has is how do we deal with defiance and how do we deal with chutzpah? And the question itself begs an answer. Are today's children more chutzpahdik? Most parents of today's children will say that children are indeed more chutzpahdik today than they ever were before, certainly from one generation ago, or certainly from the way we were. Kids answer back. Parents call me all the time, telling me our kids just answer back with a fresh mouth. They, we tell them to do things and they just answer us back with chutzpah. What happened to the world? This question I started with about is the mental health professional excusing children with disorders and with diagnoses? What happened to the world that we're looking at today? Is indeed this world full of children who are much more chutzpahdik than they ever were? Is that what we're looking at? And if so, how did that happen? So the reality is this. Up until probably about 50 years ago, somewhere around there was a lid on society, the world that we live with. There was a lid on this world called deference to elders. It was totally understood in the world at large that children had respect for older people. When we were young, here in this country, going to school, wearing school uniform, if we were on a bus, caught wearing school uniform, not giving our seat to someone who was older than us, we got a detention. If we were walking down the hallway in school and a teacher walked by and we didn't stop speaking, we got a detention. We actually had to drop eye contact. You couldn't have eye contact with the principal or you got detention. Imagine doing any of that to our kids today in school. When we were little kids, we sat at a table for a meal with the family. And if you wanted to get off a chair, I don't know if they still do this anymore, we had to chant, "Please, Mummy, darling, may I leave the table." Does anyone remember that? Try doing that today with your kids. Try doing that today with teenagers. What happened to the world? changes that happened, but what really happened was the world at large saw, this goes back to probably as early as television. When television came, it started marketing. All television wasn't about the content when it came to the world. It was about the fact that people babysat their kids, unfortunately, in front of the TV set. And the TV set started marketing to children. It started advertising. Children, do you know children never went shopping? But when we were kids, we never went shopping. There was no such thing. Your mother went and bought your stuff, and it was there in your house. A kid didn't go shopping. Today, what kid doesn't want to go shopping? Somehow they all get money, somehow they go shopping. There was no such concept when we were children of a child going shopping, but TV advertised to children, marketed in the commercials, and made them want stuff. And suddenly they were consumers. The Vietnam War was part of that process where children fought with the American government to stop the war. Children, 19, 20-year-old kids, fought with the government and won and stopped the war. What happened in the world was equalization of status between adults and children. Once upon a time, children knew their place. All this kind of language is all gone in this world we live in. And then they came with, appropriately, if I may say so, the 800 numbers. Is it 800 numbers here? For like social services and things. They had abuse numbers, where children could call up a number if they thought they were being abused. Right, the government set up these numbers, and kids started threatening the parents and the adult population. If you do that, if you don't give me this, I'm going to call the number. I'm going to report you. The world shifted in the last 50 years where there was equalization of status between adults and children. If we think this doesn't affect us, we're fools. Of course it affected our world. This wasn't aimed at our world, this is the secular world, but of course it touched our world. Everything out there, unfortunately infiltrates and got us into our world. It touches us. I think, for example, it's kind of weird, in my humble opinion. You see parents, they think it's adorable to dress up a little boy like in a penguin suit, and send him to shul on Shabbos. Everyone thinks it's adorable. And he goes to shul and everyone's so proud of him. He can barely walk, right? He's like penguins. I'm waiting till they make a little mini Borsalino for this little boy. And they're going to send him. It's funny. Women's clothes. My wife told me this, fascinating. Once upon a time, there was women's clothes and girls' clothes. Today, girls' clothes is women's clothes shrunk. It's send the boy to shul in his shirt and a cardigan. Why are you putting him in a three-piece suit with a bow tie? And you're like, everyone's cute. It's not cute. Well, it is cute. I got it. It's cute. But psychologically, it's not cute. What's happened to us is unwittingly, we bought into this system of equalization of status, where children look at us as equals with us. It's true, technically they don't have car keys, okay. They don't have credit cards, fine. They don't have as much money as us, right? They probably do have credit cards already, I don't know. It's like mad. We've equalized the status. So then when we come along and start telling our kids to discipline them, they look at me like, who are you exactly? Like, who are you? How do you exactly decide bedtime? Parents fall into this rubbish in very insidious ways, in ways that I find, when you look at it as you get older, you begin to see it clearer and clearer. Like parents, I'll give you an example, technology. Parents panic. They're like a deer in the headlights. Technology. The kids, they don't even look. You see kids play with technology like it's nothing. They don't even look at it. They can text or whatever they do without even looking. It's like just crazy. Parents, I know how many homes I go into, and parents make themselves into antiques. You officially acknowledge you are an antique. You know, when you do it, when the clock changes, and your microwave has that clock, you know, and it's like and you have no clue how to change the time on your microwave. Your kids will do it in their sleep. You know, it comes to these like things like technology, and we panic, and then we think it's cute when the kids do it. You tell the kids, basically you're just informing your kid you're an antique. And if it comes to things, silly things like microwaves and that clock on the oven, when it comes to Torah and values, we've already conditioned themselves there to see us as antiques. I think it's not cool. I personally keep anything like technology, I keep it in the bathroom and I learn it. I will never let my kids know they know stuff more than me. No such thing. I might ask them, I don't have time to go and reprogram, but it's the same way I ask them to go and empty the garbage. Same way, go to the garbage, change the clock on the microwave, no problem with that, no. I have a big problem with panicking about the clock on the microwave. You know, panicking about, how to set, the setting on your car for the car seat, to go back. The kids do this and I'm like nothing. It's like nothing to them. So what's happened in the world has been this equalization of status between us and them, where kids sort of see themselves as equals with us. That lid that once existed on society, and certainly existed when we were kids, my age, when we were kids, there was a very clear lid on society called deference to elders. That lid, I submit to you, is gone. It came off. So imagine all the kids with a variety of problems, struggles, and issues, with impulse disorder, attention deficit disorder, and all sorts of problems they may have had, where that lid was on society, that lid held them in place. It was an azer, it was a support to them to help them control themselves, to help them self-discipline, because the society conducted itself in a certain way where everyone had to have respect to elders. When that lid flew off, which is gone, you go to, it's mind-boggling, you go into stores, anywhere you go, you see the way kids treat their parents. I'm talking about in the secular world around us. It's mavla, it's shocking. It's shocking. You go into any store today, you watch what carries on between mothers and their children. When they're out shopping, with the kids screaming at their parents and threatening them, fine, so they buy something. It's meshuggah. That world, to a degree, a large degree, has come into our world. And in such a world, imagine the challenge today's young parents have, trying to bring up kids. With all the struggles and problems, with the academic expectations of the school systems that leave most kids not feeling good about what's going on every day in school. Most kids are not enjoying it. On top of that, this lid disappeared off society that kept kids somewhat in self-control. With the incidents of various traumas and struggles and abuses that can happen to our children, with all this that's going on there, what exactly is the chance that we're going to bring them up to be really healthy without some serious thought about how we're doing this? It's not going to happen by default, not in this generation, not in any generation going forward. Chutzpah Yazki, says the Navi. Chutzpah is a fact. And if we're going to work out how to do it, we need to have a mahalav, exactly how are we going to do this. How on earth, when all these factors are impacting our children, how exactly are we going to bring up our children to be resilient? That means to deal with life's problems, to be respectful, to cope with an academic system that maybe is too difficult or is too negative for me and too hard for me, but to cope with it anyway and do well in it anyway, and to listen to their parents and cope with struggles of life. How are we going to do this? Okay, here's the answer. He said till 12. Here's a simple formula. I wanted to build the case. I just wanted you to understand. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't bore anyone with all this theory of how we got to where we are. But it's not any individual family or home or parent. I don't believe that at all. I believe we're all struggling with this for the reasons I've described. No individual family should feel it's our fault. It's us. It's everyone. It's all of us. It's our society we're living in today and the challenges today. So we need to respond with ideas that are relevant to today if we're going to help our kids. The question of the night is, how do we build resilience in our children so that our children will be able to cope with this very difficult world they're trying to grow up in? And I'm going to tell you how to do it. You see, the key of all of it, I started with this idea. 0 to 2, right, is nurture, unconditional love. Built on that was the limit setting. I want to take that a little deeper and make it clearer. How do you build healthy attachments with your children? What are the ingredients you need to know we all want to build healthy attachments. And if we build healthy attachments with our children will have resilience. And regardless of what they go through, the chances are they will cope with it and or they will bounce back despite it. What are the 4 ingredients of resilience? This is the key. If you walk out with this tonight, then it was good night to come here. This is life-altering if you can remember the stuff that I'm going to tell you now. There are 4 S's. The 4 S's of resilience. The 4 S's of attachment. This is probably the most important thing you will ever hear. I say it humbly but honestly about how to bring up your kids and make them healthy. I guarantee you, if you ask any friend who's a therapist, who works with kids, understands child psychology, who tell them what I just said, they will affirm this is probably the most important thing you will ever hear, ever, about how to bring up healthy children and make them resilient. The 4 S's. I'm going to describe them in detail, but let me just tell you what they are. They are safe, secure, seen, and soothed. S-O-O-T-H-E-D. Soothed. Safe, secure, seen, and soothed. These are the 4 S's of attachment. And it works like this. The first one we have to do with all our kids is make sure they feel safe. That means that we provide an environment of safety. Safety is described in 5 areas. There are 5 different areas of life in which we have to make sure they feel safe, and these are the 5 areas in which unwittingly abuse can happen to our children. We have to make sure there's no physical abuse. Almost everyone today, all the Gedolim in the last generation have agreed that aside from what we call the insult punch, where you insult them, you're not really hurting them, you're insulting them. You know, a kid walks near the street, they're 2 years old, they walk near the road, you give them an insult punch to bring the point. You're not hurting them, you're insulting them. Aside from that, we don't hit anymore. There was a world where it was okay, where we got hit, we got punched, we got caned, for heaven's sakes. We got hurt. Today you go to jail for caning. We got caned as kids. The world changed. I submit it changed. First of all, there's no physical abuse. We have to make sure safe is described in these 5 areas. No physical abuse. No emotional abuse. We have to be careful that we don't ruin the self-esteem of our children by telling them how worthless they are. You'll never make anything. If you don't study, you'll never amount to anything. You're never going to become anything. You're just so stupid. Why would you say that? You're so stupid. All this stuff is out. It's all emotional abuse. is psychological abuse, where we undermine their values, where we teach them one thing and we act another way. The classic example of that is when we can give a whole drasha on Shabbos about the importance of tzedakah, and then when the Meshulach comes to the door, someone says, shh, turn off. They go. Okay, they go. It's psychological abuse, as I say, psychological abuse. It's where we dashen about covered, about Achtarach and Kamaicha, and then as husbands and wives in front of the kids, we mamish like yell at each other. We criticize each other in front of the kids. Hashem Yerachim. Psychological abuse. Sexual abuse is poshut and obvious. We have to, and we've spoken about that, and we should continue speaking about it. We can never, ever, we have to understand it's real. It's undermining our communities. It's damaging so many kids. We have to be vigilant about it. We have to work at this. We have to understand this. There's no excuse for a parent today bringing up kids not to understand and be taught and educated how to protect and safeguard your children. There's no excuse anymore. You just have to. And the last one is spiritual abuse. So we have physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, and spiritual. We have to make sure our kids are not abused in any of these ways. We don't undermine them. We don't make them feel horrible about themselves. This is safety. We have to provide safety where they feel safe on all these 5 dimensions. That's our job as parents. And that includes things like driving carefully with kids in the car, making sure the doors are locked at night, making sure there's a safe environment around the children. That's the first key to attachment, healthy attachment. If we don't provide safety for our children, they will not attach to us because they don't feel safe with us. The second one is secure. It is our obligation to provide security to our children. Security means things like, number one secure issue is the love between husband and wife, the respect and love and dignity with how we deal with each other in front of the children. That provides security. Children need to feel secure about the predictability of a Shabbos table or a Yom Tov table. They need to know this is a secure place. I can feel both safe and secure here. I'm not going to be ripped to shreds by some over-eager father who's going to try and take me apart with the parasha sheets. Or when I say it via Torah, look at me and say, nah, the Rabban says Andrewish, I'm not sure it's right. That's a Torah. I mean, it's crazy what things go. You know how many kids I've met who hate those parsha sheets? They mamish hate those parsha sheets. They dread sitting at a Shabbos table because they're terrified someone's going to say, so what parsha is it this week? And they actually don't remember. They don't remember. And it's humiliating to them. Utterly humiliating. Mashgiach Matzio many times spoke against parsha sheets. I don't know if you know that. It was very much against it. He felt it took the ruach of a nice Shabbos meal. It took it from so many kids who weren't ready for it. In my family, we changed the whole system. We changed the whole thing. We only did the parsha sheet of the youngest. Well, the youngest is always in love with Hashem. And they love their parsha sheet, right? Whoever's your youngest in your family, everyone's smiling. Your youngest, that's the cutie pie, right? Everyone loves that one, and that one loves Hashem. It's all about Hashem, the taper, the giraffe. They're like having fun. Everything Torah is fun for them. So we had a simple system. We had asked the youngest, only the youngest, and then everyone age, like the next one up in age, was asked, would you like to add something? You don't have to. But if you want to, you can add. Like you could say something if they were dying to say. Some of them were, some of them weren't. Some of them had no clue which parsha it was that week. Leave them alone. We have to create security in our children around us, that they feel secure. They feel secure about, will camp have, will I go to camp or I won't go to camp? It's a whole deal half the year. You're not going to camp, you're not going to camp. There will be camp, we're going, we're not on vacation. This is not secure, this is not good for kids. They need to feel secure that if there's like seasonal clothing, winter clothing and summer clothing, that they will get the clothing as they get older, and they're growing, they'll get what they need. We definitely shouldn't be bemoaning that we don't have enough money in front of the kids. I know tons of families have no money at all, and the kids grew up thinking we were rich. Because money wasn't talked about. And how many families I know today who unfortunately constantly bemoaning money. That creates insecurity in our children. We have to shut up and not talk about it. Forgive me. You allowed to say that here? Yeah, I think so. In America you can't say it. I forget which country. Okay. But you have to not say these things. We can't talk this way in front of our kids. And certainly not to undermine each other, husband and wife, in front of the kids, not with facial expression, not as the Al-Chet says, with Sikr Einayim. And the kids see you looking that way at each other. It destroys attachment. If they see a husband and wife are not attached to each other, mommy and daddy are not attached to each other, they don't want to attach to us also. They also don't feel safe with us. So we have to provide safety, we have to provide security. Where they're secure in the knowledge that our family is a loving family, that we go to shul, and we do mitzvahs, and we're happy, and we enjoy it. Not that we sit down Friday night by the mill and everyone's like raw, exhausted, as if somehow, this whole chiyuv to make all this food for the meal, and meanwhile by the time you get there, you're all miserable and exhausted. What's the point? Eat pizza. It doesn't make sense. And marriage doesn't make sense. We have to provide security for our kids, that they feel safe and secure to come to live in our homes and our families. And if we're missing something, Sheffield will get it. Right now we don't have it. And Mr. Shem will get it. Not everything that we have to have. There are other things in the home. You understand? We just have to talk in a language to our children where they feel safe and secure. The third one is seen. Too many families I've seen over the years, they bring up the kids. It's like a group. You're a group. You're the kids. It's like get the kids in the bath, get the kids in the car, get the kids to bed. They get the kids. It's like they're with the kids, with the kids, with the kids, with the kids. The kids, they feel like this clump called the kids. Okay, kids, it's time for this kids. It's totally crazy. Look at any family with grown-up kids. They've got 8 kids. The oldest is around 40. The youngest around 20. You've got 8 different mishpachas, different types of people. You have different personalities. We have to see our kids. We have to look at them and see, who are you? What's special about you? It's not just I'm always busy with the kids against the kids. Friday night, we should give our kids a bracha. I try to whisper something unique in the child's ear that I noticed that week. Something I saw that was special that you did. That just like I noticed. I want you to know I noticed it because I want you to feel seen. I want you to know that I notice when you're down. You don't have to talk to me about it if you don't want to. But I notice you're unhappy. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But I want you to know I noticed. I noticed if you're excited about something. I noticed what your needs are. I noticed you're missing something. I noticed you want something. I especially notice your talents and your uniqueness. Every one of her children are unique. It's mamish amazing. They all have incredibly unique talents, and we don't spend enough time looking for them. That's the difference between a mechanech and a melamed. A melamed is about installation. Installing yediyah in a kid's head. They don't know. A Rashi, an Ois, a Pasach, a comments. They don't know what it is. So a melamed is melamed. They install it. A mechanech is about extraction. It's about taking out of a child your uniqueness. It's about showing you what's special about you. That's chinuch. That's a Chanukas. What's a Chanukas bias? Make a Chanukah where you have a new house where you show it off to all the neighbors. That's why you have Chanukas bias. That's for sure. What are you making Chanukas bias about? It's about acknowledging the potential that lies in this home. For making a Shabbos and a Yom Tov, for bringing up a family, a Chanukah Zabayis, a dedication to a potential that lies in this home. That's chinuch. A real mechanech extracts from their child, what is your uniqueness? Who are you? I noticed you have a gift in this, and you have a gift in that. And gently and privately, I notice you have a schwachkeit here. Can I help you with it? Kids need to be seen by us. We have to take the time, every one of us, with every one of our kids, to sit down, take a few minutes before Shabbos, and think to yourself, what's special? What can I say to my child Friday night that's special, that will make them know I saw them? I saw you. I see your uniqueness. That's seeing. That's the third leg of developing healthy attachment. And the fourth one is soothed. You know, when we were kids, you know, if you got hit at school, you didn't tell your father, because then you came home and you said, you got hit? Bang! Don't you get hit again. Our kids come home. In this world that we're living in today, it's not that world, it's this world. The one without that lid on top. It's this new world that we're struggling with. In this world, it doesn't matter what they did if it was their fault. Your kid gets on a bike because they're dying to ride a bike with, and they take the training wheels off. And the first thing they do is ride off the curb into a car, break a light and break a finger, and you end up in hospital, who knows what. And what's the first thing? Who let him ride the bike? Why are you riding the bike? You should be riding the bike. It's a whole dimma cheshbon. No. In this world, is you put them on your lap and you say, "I shayfla, my skirt band, come, let's help you." Your kid hurts themselves. It doesn't matter they did it to themselves. The first thing you do is soothe them. When a child comes home from school and they tell you a whole story about how they got bullied, or how this Rebbe picked on them, or how this teacher picked on them, the first thing you do is stick them on your lap and hold them and soothe them. You'll deal with what happened later. You don't evoke the Spanish Inquisition right away to find out what happened and make them feel awful. It was your fault. How many times did I tell you not to do that? I don't understand. I told you not to do that, and you did it again. Of course you got hurt. It's crazy. You don't listen to me. Even if you've told them 50 times not to do it, you first put them on your lap, and you hold them, and you rock them, and you make them feel soothed. And then you can talk to them. Say, go talk to them. Of course you should talk to them. Of course you should explain it to them. But that's not the first thing you do. Your kid's hurting. They're in pain. And even if you feel they self-impose that pain by not listening to your sage advice, you soothe them. First thing you do is you soothe them, you make them feel good. Doesn't matter what happened, you soothe their pain. You tune into them. You want to explain them, you want to talk it through with them, that's all later. You could even wait a day or two. But right now you soothe them. And when you do safe, secure, seen and soothed, when you do these four things, you create healthy attachments. Your kids feel connected to you. They feel tuned in. They feel safe in relationships. It's not just their relationship with you. You've salvaged their life. Because what's happened is internally, you've created a belief system in them that life is safe, that I am secure in this world, that even if things go bad, and even if I go through crises or problems or tragedies or traumas, your child is resilient. Your child will get through it. Your child will work out how to be healthy. When they go to school later on, they learn how to be more respectful. Even if this particular teacher or this particular Rebbe is a little too tough on them, you created resilience. They feel safe. And they don't react badly to it, they absorb it. They can cope with it better because you made them have healthy attachments. Guess what? Kids with healthy attachments are done the kafsos better. When they go through life, and people, all of us can have a bad day where we don't exactly treat ourselves or each other, people we love and care for perfectly. We can all be a little bit off. People who have healthy attachments, they can cope in a healthy way with a friend, a relative, a brother, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, someone. They can cope with that person having an off day because they feel safe, secure, seen, and soothed. They feel attached. You understand? It's life. You've given them life. Children who really have good attachments, and this is the key to the whole thing. You know what they do with good attachments? When we as parents teach our children to have great attachments with us, because we put the work in. We put the work of safe, secure, seen and soothed in, and we did it. It was hard work, but we did it. We worked in our own midas, our own egos, and we did the work. And we taught our kids to have good attachments with us. You know why that's so important? Because then our children can take that attachment and transfer it when they get older to the Av HaRachamon. Because life is full of nisyonos and struggles and inequalities, and it seems like the neighbor makes more money than I do, and this one has a nicer car, and that one has this, and this one's got better children, and that one's, I don't know. Life doesn't seem fair so often. But when we gave our children healthy attachments to us in this difficult world, they transfer that attachment to Rebbeinu Shalom. And even though this world is the Olam HaSheker, it's not Olam HaEmes, that's up there. This is Olam HaSheker. It's a world of lies down here. And in this world of lies, they don't fault God. They don't judge Hashem. They feel cared for and attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we gave them that foundation of attachment, which they now transfer to Rebbeinu Shalom. It nourishes them through the difficult schooling. It nourishes them through the traumas and difficulties of life. And eventually, it gifts them with the ability to be close to Rebbeinu Shalom. Pretty good deal, though. That's attachment. That's parenting. This is what we're after. If we can all just commit ourselves to safe, secure, seen and soothed, to put effort and energy, it's not just a drasha, please. But it's a formula, it's a roadmap for how we can help our kids grow up, be resilient,